Intellectual capital, what's that? Anybody knows? When people come into your business and learn the business, they know more about your IT than you, they know more about your product than you and stuff like that. Then they leave your company with all that information and all that intellectual capital. They may develop something while they're there.
That happened to a company I worked for.
Yeah, and then when they leave, should they take it? Do you own it? Who owns it? Who should pay? And so on.
They didn't even have a password to get into this new system. They have this one guy, he was the VP of so-and-so to implement this new system.
Yeah, Mr. One Guy.
And let me tell you, when they let him go,
Yep.
they couldn't even get into the system.
No.
And when they contacted him,
He could.
he told them, y'all have to pay me a fee for that.
Of course.
Y'all have to pay me a consultation fee. And he did stick it to them.
Of course.
He flicking stick it to them.
Those are the risks that are connected to intellectual capital. And it goes on and on. All
I
right?
blame the organization.
Of course.
It will be cheap.
Folks, this is nothing new. There's somebody and everybody in his department who is carrying information that other people don't know.
Yeah.
It's the same, and we are in the 21st century with all that history, and we're still allowing it to happen.
Yes.
Because people are crowding the information, they're hiding it, they're refusing to give it, and there's such a buddy system. You try to get somebody to give it, somebody else comes in to protect them. Why are you harassing Susie?
Yeah. That's true.
Or something.
That's true.
And so at the end of the day, the organization suffers in very much the same way. When Susie retires or leaves, she leaves with it. If you don't want to pay, she doesn't have anything to say. Or even if you want to pay, she ain't want it because she was vexed from 1973 with that firm. Or whatever the reason is.
It's true.
It's a strange phenomena. Okay? I wish I could say it's not so. Accounting controls, well, that's how the chick got the 2 million. If they had proper accounting controls, that would never happen. You follow? So if your controls are weak, that's what's going to happen. If only one person has the code for the information system, dog eat your lunch. If your recruitment program is weak and unthought of and not structured, you're going to pay all kinds of money firing and hiring all day. We already talked about this. So having one supplier, okay? Public access.
Now that's a tricky
Because
one.
if somebody can't have, say they're disabled and you don't have a disability ramp, then you lose that customer.
That's a simple example, but it's a good one.
That's almost every government organization.
Not only do you lose a customer potentially, but you might be sued, depending on which country you are in. And many companies abroad have been, especially free countries like the US and Canada, where you could sue for anything. You go to China, but you suing because they don't have a thing to rule you. They won't find you nor your chair ever again. Because people don't talk about the horrible human rights situation in China and Russia and such countries. Yeah, all we know is talking about who Ling Lang, who is bowing and smiling and making you think that all is well. It is not.
It's not.
It's an illusion.
Chinese system is the most rugged. China and Russia, I think, are the two most. Well, in the Middle East too. All these countries have major problems.
We talking about Uncle Sam. Uncle Sam is a joke. Uncle Sam is a Boy Scout compared to these guys.
They really don't like blacks.
Okay.
Let's just call spade now. They really don't flip it like blacks. Now you
Who?
see black men dying on the side of the road.
Who doesn't like blacks?
America, they don't want nothing to do that. They don't want.
Yes, they
want
do.
The black browns, they want them out.
No.
I don't know why they don't
Folks,
yield back to the country where they come from.
where will blacks go in the U.S. if they don't stay?
Donald Trump told the 4 congressmen, please go back and help your country.
They should. That
Go back and help
group.
your country.
Yes.
You come in here telling people just that go back and go help
Do you know
your
what they
country.
said? Does anybody remember what the woman said? What she said was something very derogatory. And if you are benefiting from a country and you weren't born there, the least you could do is treat the country with what?
Respect.
What about free speech?
Free speech?
You guys say like that. Australians say, if you want to be in my country, you abide by my rules and don't go
Folks,
find another country.
Free
Is that what
speech?
America is
You
built
better be
on?
careful what you say in this town. You better be careful what you say
No,
in
they're
this
built on
town.
the freedom to bear arms.
What?
That's what it is.
folks, we are still,
Sorry.
the Americans are still fortunate enough. The Bahamians and the Caribbean were still fortunate enough. We could say all kind of stuff. We could say, stink Hubert, and go home. You say stink ying yang go, they won't find you anymore. And even though you may be telling the truth, doesn't matter. Did you know that?
You better be careful what you say and who you say it to.
Yes.
What?
Okay, folks? So we have to look at the big picture. What about this? Well, we talked about that a little bit. Employees, we know the issues are there. Unionism is a huge problem. It's a benefit, but it's also a problem.
Yes.
If we don't manage it properly,
Make you lazy.
we
and
know
lousy.
not only that, unions can come together and bring companies down
Yeah.
in one form
Make
or
employees lazy too.
another. Okay? That's a whole other issue.
Lazy and lousy.
Because if the union is not running efficiently, the company is going to be in huge trouble. Okay? Of course, unions are good in that it's they watch management, but they also have that negative side. And if they're not doing their jobs, companies suffer as well. All right? What about products and services? What kind of risk is that? You have to keep what? Upgrading them from the Polaroid that comes out
No, if you
to
continue to
the...
get your products out of China, you ain't gonna have business going on. Jesus.
I wonder why. We all know the story about those products.
Boy.
They don't last
They don't last
very long. Even the
Nowadays.
buildings they build in some parts of the world,
Nowadays.
including China, after a while you're sleeping
Yes.
and you and the building are going down. I don't know. Maybe it's just hearsay. But my grandma used to say, where there's smoke,
What?
I don't have an escape plan.
there's fire. All right.
That ain't even really a China.
I used to
Yeah.
So
ain't built to last.
how do we manage all of these risks? Okay, we talk about them incessantly. So this second part is just kind of designed to introduce you to risk management, some of the things to think about and trying to resolve whatever firm you work in, whether it's insurance, banking, government, church, home, whatever the case might be.
Regardless of how the size of the business.
Doesn't matter. Okay?
All of these
Everybody
things,
now
small
all of
businesses
no
are
small business is not going to consider all of these things.
Right.
At least not to the extent of as a big business, but they should certainly consider many of them so that they can keep their small business up and running. A lot of reasons why small businesses fail because they fail to do some of these things. You'll see from very shortly.
Well, Mr. Wilkinson, hold plug in there. Hold on a second for me. Small businesses cannot concern themselves with all of this. Yes, they should do it. But when you have this one guy trying to make his business, trying to get to the next level in his business, and he's constantly dealing with thieving employees. I mean, he dealing with VAT. Oh my God, VAT. Oh my God. Dealing with suppliers not bringing the stuff on time, dealing with the competition. There's a lot.
It is.
You don't manage the
I mean-
business, you lose them.
But that's the nature
You
of
don't stay
business.
competitive.
Your problems might be smaller, but they are similar. The big company has the same problems, just on a larger scale.
No. Let's be honest here. Let's call a spade a spade. The bigger businesses have more latitude and more financial assistance.
Well, again,
Let's just be called spade here.
Again.
The small business, they have to make it or you die.
what's one of the risks of running a small business? Limited capital. Right? That's not the same
Every
risk
day
as
is
a
a
big
struggle.
business. Yeah. So you have to take every situation, you have to take your risk and look at it. See? Assess it. For example, let's take your small business. How does he assess the risk? What is my biggest risk? Limited capital. It's hard for me to get money from the bank. It's hard for me to raise money in the capital markets and so on. So you make an assessment that capital is what? A big problem for you. And for most small businesses, it always is.
Number one.
Okay? Always. Okay? But so you have to find, so once you assess that to be the thing, then you have to analyze it. What do we need to do now to make the assessment work? Well, we don't waste money. In other words, I won't go to the cash register every Friday, close my eyes, yuck out money, go to Vegas. With my bestest girl. See?
Right.
That's what part of the analysis is. We will find ways to control what? Power and other resources. If you come to work, you have to work. You don't come and hang around. You don't work overtime that's not required, and so on. So these things still apply. So you assess it, you analyze it, then you ID what those risks are. Whether you're small, medium, or large.
Wow.
Give it a name and determine what's the best way to deal with the problem. That's really what this list is all about. Even right down to threats and opportunities. One of the reasons why a lot of small businesses fail because They fail to consider these things. Look at the risk in marriage and relationships. One of the reasons why marriages and relationships suffer and fail oftentimes, because we don't do any assessment. We said, I marry and I said, I ain't flicking. Yeah. Or whatever the reason. Money, love, get out of the house, whatever. The point is, we don't really consider, because we don't think even that they're relevant to a marriage. But they are. Because if you marry somebody who likes to dance, they won't be like, huh? Sooner or later, she tell you, I leaving you. Because I got an opportunity in LA. Okay? What to do with name who marry Beyonce? Yeah, Jay-Z called me, and I get this my break. I gone. Now, I'm just using that as a crazy example, but it's not really crazy. See? You have to assess the levels of risk no matter where you are. A lot of times, whether you're a small business, a marriage, a household, a church, a company, a country even, we fail to do these assessments because we say we don't have the time, we don't have the information, and we say, oh, they're not even relevant in some cases. Or I don't have the time. I don't have the time to figure out if my wife is unhappy or not. I don't have the time trying to find out why. I'm too busy with this. And I paying the bills? Yes, you are. But she will still leave you one day. If you do not what? Consider other variables.
Variables indeed.
Okay?
Variables indeed.
I ain't thinking of those. I'm so far from that I don't do myself. Alright? And so basically once you look at all the, you don't have to definitely necessarily be applying all of them. You apply what is relevant to your environment. Okay? That's the key. You don't have to, do I need to go on the whole list? Hell no.
So you have to really be strategic. If any business or for example, if any of us in this room decide we want to open up a business, take me back to the other screen for me, please, Mr. Wilkinson. Mm-hmm. You know, you have to really be able to assess all of those things to some degree.
Absolutely.
Before you even start the business.
Whether it's small, medium, or large. Okay? I got a call 2 days ago from somebody. This is somebody from the US. We have affiliations in the Bahamas. Somebody told me that you have been around, you have some experience, blah, blah, blah. We need somebody to advise us financially. We're trying to do this big thing, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Now, that's what they're talking about is a whole bunch of money. And I'm like, boy, my first thing was, is this a prison sentence or what? Now, some people say, well, what do you think about that? That way, it's an opportunity. Maybe, but not necessarily.
That's true.
So, even in making the decision as to whether you're going to become a part of some of these things, you have to recognize to see where they're going to decide if you're going to get involved in it in the first place. And then if you decide it's something viable that you should get involved in, no matter what size the firm or organization, you have to consider most of these things to some degree. Maybe in some cases to a lesser.
Fred Ramsey, well, he had 7 years, they said it's Fred Ramsey too, Jesus.
That was not necessary, but there are many people like that. Okay? It was a complete unfortunate.
Boy, he got thrown right under the bus politically.
Right? Yeah, well.
He screwed over, and that was it for him.
All right.
This town is a serious place.
So I just kind of threw that list up. We're gonna kind of talk a little bit about them when we come back next time. But just kind of think about those things, and as you read the various categories, you'll see what I mean in terms of you consider them based on the situation that you're in. Every one of you work for a particular type of firm. If you were at some point to say, wait a minute, let me really sit down after going through this stuff and consider what kinds of risks are facing this firm. You might be surprised to find that you'll come up with some stuff that you never thought about before. Okay? Even at the board level sometimes, a lot of these things are not considered because these guys are not aware, they don't care, they're running some other program. Okay?
But how do you get through to these people? Because they're not listening to you, considered a small fry.
Well, it's the same problem as always. When the king was king, you go to the king with his, they have you take off his head. How dare him? Right. Nobody's listening. It's an age-old problem.
You only could invest in something that's yours or that you're a part of.
Granted. But again.
Yes, you want the institution that you work for to be successful. Yes, you want to help it. You want to be able to contribute through it. But they don't even see you.
Well, perhaps not. And that's part of the risk. You may decide not to bother at all, or you might decide I'm going to give my suggestions and they ignore you, and so on. All these things are out there, and this is basically what's happening. What happens, folks, is that's the board, the devil with it. I just want to make my money and get the hell home. And generally, that's kind of what happens depending on what level you are. But the thing is, organizations are expected to be thinking about these things. That's the whole point.
Yeah, but they
Okay?
hire the thinkers.
They're
hire the
expected.
person-
I
They
mean,
hire the persons who they say will think of these things. And not you, Katrina. We have hired the persons to think about. That's the truth. That's the truth of the matter.
they
Yeah.
say so, but they don't always do so. Okay? Remember, what we're talking about here is the ideal, aren't we? What ought to happen. Now, what ought to happen and what happens in practice are two completely different things.
And by learning this course,
Okay.
you expect to go and hopefully want to be a part, do
Hopefully, one day you'll get into a position where,
You're on the board and
yeah, or even if you're not on the board, you're somewhere where you can take some of this stuff and contribute to something. Maybe somewhere along the line, somebody will take a decision to treat a risk that you have suggested. Maybe. In the meantime, you could certainly look at the risk immediately around you and see what can be done to mitigate them so that they don't what? Drown you.
out of control.
Because there's some things in your organization that you need to be aware of so that they don't drown you.
That's true.
When your boss comes to you with certain risk issues, you need to be able to decide what's the level of risk in there
Wow.
and make a decision based on that so that it doesn't drown you. So it doesn't even have to get to the board level. It can be right in your own little circle of influence.
every day.
Yes, every single day. You have to be looking around you to see what kind of risk is in your
Jobs.
environment
Jobs.
and start thinking about how I'm going to mitigate. If you have a boss, for example, who likes to have you sign or do stuff and they'll sign later, right away, that's a risk issue. Because sooner or later, something will not be signed. Something will go
I have a
wrong.
boss
And
who
then
makes
what do you do?
decisions very flippantly. I can't stand that about him. And when I go to him, no, seriously, when I go to him and I complain about it, you know, he said, well, Katrina, you're the only one that have a problem. He make it sound like I'm the only one. He's just dangerous.
Make no mistake about it.
Dangerous.
Let me tell you, no matter what you think
Dangerous.
you see,
You send an email.
part of the risk in your
He don't answer
environment,
the emails. He don't
Too bad.
answer
You
emails.
have it in black
Too
and white.
bad. You don't have
Folks,
to
the fact that he doesn't answer
He doesn't
is
answer.
you guys have a major risk issue in your firm.
Yeah, we
I-
know it. My company.
Who is doing something
Listen,
about
My
it?
company has some cultural and political stuff. Listen to me. I love that company. I ride or die with my company.
And every company.
Every company, but
Yes.
we have some persons in there. They are absolutely dangerous.
I think that's
And my boss is one of them.
And anywhere you
He
go,
makes these decisions
anywhere
that
you go,
make him. No, seriously, he makes these decisions that make only him one look good.
he is not.
And nobody else in the
That's
department.
Folks.
Right? No.
That's
Nobody else in the
everywhere.
department. And the decisions we make tend to hurt those who work in the department. And when we voice
It's
our
fascinating.
concerns,
There's nothing
when we
new under
voice
the
our
sun.
concerns, he would never call a combined meeting. Like, for example, I'm an executive agent in my company. There are only but 7 or 8 of us. Only 7 or 8 of us. And he'll never, ever call a meeting with all 7 or 8 of us together.
Hurricane Katrina, let me ask you something.
That happens everywhere.
Let me ask you
Never.
something. Not only is that a common problem,
Yeah.
but the question is, why are they allowing him to get away with it? So the problem is bigger than him. The problem is, why is the system allowing him to get away with it? I'm not sure you may want to know the answer to that, because that may have other risk issues attached to it. Because usually when people like that seem to be getting away, it's never good. Because now,
He said,
if he's
only you
doing
will
that,
feel like this. Only you will feel. I speak with all executives,
That's
all of us
coming from a
including
higher
him.
level.
But he's like,
Correct.
he
No
refused, Mr. Wilkinson, to call a combined meeting with all of us because he said he just can't handle it. He said we are too intense, we come at him too strong. You know, he can't deal with it, right? So one-on-one, he have one-on-one meetings with us. When we have a concern,
Folks,
send
let
it
me
to
tell-
my email. And guess what he says to us? Don't copy anybody on the
Folks.
email we send him because he just ain't responding.
let me tell you
So
something.
he's like dangerous. He's like he's isolated every one of us.
And remember, whenever you isolate, you what? Conquer. And that's why he will destroy anyone he wants.
That's what he has
See,
done.
one-on-one meetings means that
Strategically, he has
he
done
can
that.
intimidate you individually.
Correct.
Okay? There is
But I
method.
think he's been told to do it that way.
Well,
I really believe he's been told to restructure
I-
because the agents in our company had so much power and influence. They wanted to break that in some degree. You know, the agents.
well, there you have
we
it.
deal with the clients. We have the clients, and
so
they're like,
he-
they have too much
so
power.
he is
we
not-
have to break
he
that,
is
and
not-
that's exactly what they
He
did.
is not acting
Alone,
unilaterally. Not
But
probably.
you know that's
Exactly higher up as
No question about it. It's the same old crap.
Organizational strategy for something.
Yeah,
No doubt.
yeah.
Okay? And maybe you guys
and
were
any of
getting
us will come
to.
and go and complain or say
something.
we don't like this decision. Well, you're the only one that feels that way. What? In time. Like what?
Is there any risk inherent in that situation? Of course. And maybe the management saw a certain level of risk as well.
They
And so
did.
they sent him to.
They sent him to break it up.
There you go.
And he sure
Okay?
did. He
All right. And now watch
They
this.
figure you all come together, go form your own insurance company and take all them clients.
See, I've only been there 5 years, but we have those executive agents. They was there for 25 years. They are a bigger force than me, who just joined the club.
No, and they
And
know.
they decide we're not having this large clientele of the executive agent carry the largest portfolio of clients, right? The largest portfolio of clients. That's where the company money
No,
is.
no,
The
we
executive.
know and they know.
And
And
they
what
will-
happens is those people who carry the largest of anything tend to become a certain kind of people, group, gang, junk in the group, whatever. And management is always concerned about things like
Yeah.
that. Okay? That's nothing new.
Because if you all walk,
Okay.
they know that that's a lot.
Not only war, sometimes they have a sphere of influence that is perceived to
Let me tell
be.
you how dangerous it is. It is. One of the executive agents actually went over to my boss and went straight to the president.
There you go.
And guess what the president said? Did you go through your boss? Go through your boss.
And again-
it's like they don't even want to listen to you. They
Again.
don't even see you.
These things are not new. And that's why he was sent to
Break it
break
up.
it up. Okay? Now, believe it or not, all those things that you mentioned with this whole thing about the executive group, blah, 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 this is part of what we call risk description.
Oh my God.
Because we identify, the risk identification is what? That the management saw that there was too much power with this group and blah, 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 and maybe
Right.
they send this guy to break it up.
Break
How
it
does he break it up? No group meetings,
Isolated.
one-on-one, play crazy, you shut up,
In 2
you come here.
years,
You
no
sit-
group,
so
no
so all of a
meetings,
sudden, even though we have
One-on-one
formal
meetings.
names here, all right, for risk description, things like the name, give the risk a name, what's the scope of the risk, the nature of the risk. We could take each one of these things and take any situation that has risk and somehow apply these concepts to that particular situation. Now, most people are not going to take the time to go through all this blah, blah, blah. That's okay. The important thing is that you are now what? More aware, okay, of what's going on. See? That not only can you determine that there's risk, but you can describe the risk you see in your environment, and then you can what? Estimate what? The level of risk that you're dealing with. So much so that they've come up with a little bit of mathematical stuff and all that kind of crap. In the real world, who's going to get into that? Nobody, not much. That's not important. The important thing is that you know that you need to give consideration to the risk that's not only in your firm as a whole, but the risk that is in your immediate area. Okay? The girl who doesn't follow the rules when it's time to, whatever that you were talking about earlier, that's an immediate area risk. Okay? So that's not a big deal, but it's still important. And it's important to you. So you have to find a way to mitigate that risk. So, okay? So she's a little yuppie, she doesn't, she's this, she's that. Whatever you've come up with, you now have to find a way to mitigate that, to solve that problem before it what? Drowns you. Absolutely. Because sooner or later somebody can say, excuse me, get that chick under control, else we're gonna get you under control. They start stressing you. So all of a sudden she becomes a risk factor for you. So now you need to identify that kind of risk and decide, how am I going to now deal with this in the best and appropriate way? People do this all the time. It's just that they don't always deal with it what? Appropriately. Okay? Sometimes people find very inappropriate ways to deal with it, like fire that person. When in
That
fact
happened
that's
with-
not the
remember
answer.
You remember what happened with Jimmy Campbell, right?
Sure.
What a flicking time. That
Should-
was the, man
the question
who was
is-
running the company.
Should it have happened to him? Well,
debate.
people are still divided
He
because
was-
Jimmy had his gang and thinking them had his
But he
anti-Jimmy
was-
gang.
See, truth be told, if you hire somebody to make money for you and to keep your staff and grow your company and they're doing everything they're supposed to do, why fix something that isn't broken?
Well,
Why? Because the people don't love you like that. They don't value you. They don't see you. Yeah, you own the company. They didn't even recognize the owner.
you would be
was
surprised.
jealous.
You would be surprised, yes, why people do stuff. Okay? Very much so. Okay? As a matter of fact, oftentimes when these kinds of situations come up, whether it's to Jimmy, the organization where you work, wherever we work, a lot of times we just have to ask ourselves 3 questions. The environment that I work in and the firm that I work in, what kinds of risks do they have? Has anybody ever seen any high risk issues in their job?
Yes.
Hell
For
yeah.
example,
Oh my God.
can you think of one?
I deal with a lot of international persons living abroad who would like to open IBCs.
Yes. She deals with a lot of international clients who want to open international business companies and bring in money from somewhere. Okay? Make no mistake, depending on who they are and where they're from, that's a very high risk proposal, especially in the current environment. Okay? So that is a huge example of working in an environment where you definitely have to be aware of your risk. That's why you have all the KYC and compliance and
I
blah
had
blah
a
blah.
company. I worked
Okay.
for a company where the president was sleeping with his staff. What a freaking time!
That's not novel. I wish I could
Listen,
say.
That's normal.
No,
I know
not to the
exactly.
degree.
I know exactly which company you're talking
Not to the degree what he was doing at. Listen.
You know the name of the company?
Yeah. Because my
Listen.
friend worked for that company. And she already tell us who she done
What a
work for, so I know.
freaking time. Let me tell you something.
But notice he's not disclosing
One
the name.
convention. I ain't calling no name. You see, I ain't calling you.
I
Call no name.
know.
One convention.
Why can't you guys call any name?
No, Mr. Wilkinson, because the silent too small.
No,
One
not the people's name, just the
Nobody
company name.
One convention. One convention.
You know, there's risk in not calling the
And
name
let me-
because some of us might leave our good job and go there.
No, but it's still a good company. You don't talk no fool, but listen to this.
Oh, okay, so then.
Mr. Wilkinson, one convention, right? The former convention, the president decided he leaving his wife. He took his wife on the first
This is a
trip.
true story now?
It's a true story. I
Oh,
don't
I
make
thought
up
it was
stories. I
something
can
on
tell you
TV.
stories for days. He decided he took the wife. He was bored. He wasn't mixing and mingling with nobody. Wasn't checking. The next trip, I leaving her home. I got by myself. And he partied like a rock star. He party. He was in the pool. And he had them sitting on him.
You mean like on
dancing
TV?
him. Boom, 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 boom.
Okay.
By the time we got back.
I mean, I live a very boring life.
Well, you live a boring life.
Apparently,
time
it's
we
like
got
TV
back,
stuff.
Mr. Wilkinson, by the time we got back, they had his check and let him
Wow.
immediately.
He lost his job.
That's what I call a high risk.
Wow.
That's how
Yes.
serious that
The
was.
question is,
I've never seen that like that
was
in
it
my life.
worth it? The
No
answer
time.
has to be what? No.
Because of the way he was
But
carrying
but
on,
yeah,
because he was
that
sleeping with everybody.
that behavior is just as dangerous as
But let me
the
tell
clients
you,
that she has
in
coming
the
in.
US, in the US, if one of those employees that say he pressured them,
Yeah,
they
yeah,
would have
yeah.
sued the freaking company and get millions
Yeah.
because of his position.
Folks,
What?
we all know this is nothing new now.
What?
Okay?
But
Any
see, if a black woman don't think like that. See, if that was a white woman, they would have partied with him on that trip, and then they come back, they would go straight to the lawyer and say he begged me and he pressured me and I didn't want to do it, and that company would have settled for freaking millions.
Mr. Young, a
They
word to
get rid of
the
him right away.
wise is indeed okay.
They get rid of him right away.
And if you remember what I told you,
Careful.
you will keep your risk at a very low level. If you ignore what I tell you, you might find yourself engaged in anything from medium-sized risk to was it worth his job and all those years of hard work? Hell no. It was an unfortunate and complete waste of bloody time. And he has nothing to show for it. Not a bloody That's why we profile the risk.
Oh my
When you
God.
see it, profile it.
But
Is this good for
sometimes
me?
You can't see it. That's the problem.
9 times out of 10.
You can't see it sometimes.
9 times. When was the last time we taught a child to lie? Never. This youngest child, as soon as they learn how to talk, they said, "You eating it? No." "You touched it? No." Who the hell taught them to lie? And they are innocent. Of course we know.
That's true.
We know every bloody thing we need to know.
That's true.
We just refuse to do it.
That's true.
So if you don't have to tell a little child, even if you tell Rover, what did you do? Yeah. Even the dog knows when he does something wrong.
What a time.
So you don't think we know? Of course we know. We know every bloody thing.
So we take
Our problem is we don't profile the risk. We don't give it a name. We don't give it identification. We don't determine that it's not good for us. And that's what firms need to do across the board. Look at it, identify it, profile it, and then what else do you do? Evaluate it. Is this good or bad? Is this good for the company, the country, the firm, my job, me, my churn, whatever, the dog, the cat? That's what we have to do if we're going to deal with it. The problem is we don't do it. We don't do it here and we don't do it here.
I work for another company, right? Where the president.
You're working
where
on the
one of
risky
VPs
areas.
One of the VPs was having relations with the secretary.
Same old risk.
Oh my God. The wife come on the job one day.
There's another true story.
Listen, listen, I can tell
The
you
stuff
something
I watch on
bad.
LML like
The wife
lifetime.
came on the job and said, "Stop sleeping with my effing husband." The secretary said, "I'm not sleeping with your husband." That time the wife, "No, what her husband do it?"
How she know?
She know.
How? She saw them?
Of course. Women know
Oh.
these things. Women ain't stupid. But anyhow. the
I mean, she
second time-
physically saw them?
The second time she went on the
No,
job,
Auntie, she
Mr.
know.
Wilkins said, she slapped that secretary straight down on the job, beat her dead bad.
And what
The
happened?
VP had to come, whose husband had to come and peel the two of them apart.
Is he still working there?
Company let go everybody.
Oh.
Everybody just go home.
Now, folks, I'm glad
We're
you.
talking president.
I'm glad you-
VPs and y'all don't understand.
I'm glad you said that. 'Cause
She
see,
is so serious.
see, after
That
we
power. That's
watch
the power.
this. After we have considered all this crap at these different levels, okay? For example, these are the kinds of things we do in order to keep our risk to a minimum, right? We have the board should be doing its work, the companies and everybody in the firm, and all this information should be communicated as to what the company will tolerate and what the company will not. Which brings me now to that same scenario where the fight broke out. How do you treat the risk? Well, a lot of firms end up treating it just like that. Fire all concerned. Lock up some. These are what we call what? Risk treatments.
Yeah.
Now, for our houses, we buy what? House insurance, yeah. For our car, we buy car insurance. For our life, we buy life insurance and so on. But for those kinds of things, the treatment is termination, loss of benefits, divorce, carry your tail, give my churn, whatever it is.
Wow.
Okay? The treatment might not always be the best remedy, but certainly we're always finding and seeking ways to treat these kinds of risks, unfortunately. Okay? Sadly. All right, we're going to stop there for today. So please, if you haven't finished your reading, finish the reading, and then next week we'll finish up. Don't forget, does everybody have a copy of the case?
Next week? That's next week? Or
Next
following
week.
class?
Next week is our last session. We'll
That's
have-
a lot. Oh, well, I'm going to get
Yeah.
into it.
Okay? Does everybody have a copy of the case?
Yes, I have.
Great. Please read it, answer the questions at the back. Remember, we're going to discuss it just to get your views. Use as much of the material as you can to help you come up with your answers, and we'll have a discussion on that nearing the end of next week's session. All right, have a great week. I love your life and risk.
Tell them to like these.